Welcome to Bringing Jesus Back into Focus. I'm Christopher John Joseph in Melbourne, Australia, a follower of Jesus and any pacifist teacher of love in the world. That means Jesus and Buddha and any other religion or spiritual way of life or even just humane way of life. Any child in the world, regardless of your religion or culture, if you're a pacifist and you don't join in wars and such things, then you're my brother and sister, spiritually speaking, and I honour you and you're part of the spiritual family. Jesus, of course, was originally a pacifist. It was only in 312 AD that the Emperor Constantine, the Roman Emperor, destroyed the pacifist way of Jesus to reach the spiritual heavenly world. And then the corrupt church leaders at the time destroyed it further by saying Christians can go to war if it's a just war to kill other children, which of course for 312 years after Jesus died on the cross, they never killed anyone. So the corruption is still amongst the Judeo-Christian churches, but I've never been a Judeo-Christian, a Jewish Christian. I've only ever been a follower of Jesus, and also I've studied Buddhist teachings about this singularity of the mind, being at one with love. I've had to rewrite the Gospels, and I brought out a book called where is it now? Here it is, I think. Where are we? Oh, there we are. The Gospels of Jesus Unplugged. That's available around the world. And I've had to, it's got the 5 Gospels, including Thomas. I had to sort of rewrite the more clear version of what Jesus was really saying using more modern terms, you might say, or more correct terms from the Greek linear translations, to make it clearer that Jesus and this divine source of love that he was at one with is just that, only love. So that's available around the world. Some young people find it quite stimulating. The older people who are still Judeo-Christians, they find my writing a little bit too universal. Love is everywhere. And Jesus is universal love. But that's available. But today I just want to go over a chapter in the new book, which is the Teachings of Jesus Unplugged, which I'm hoping will be published very shortly or available shortly. And I want to go over a chapter called His Words Save Us. So that's the new book, which is fairly complete. I've been fighting a fungal infection and nearly dying every day, so it's been a bit difficult to finish it, but I've just done a brief sort of rough cut of it, a couple of hundred pages. I'll just read the back of the book here. The spiritual teachings of Jesus are a universal calling to all human children on earth to awaken into our spiritual body and true identity of love and non-violence before our dualistic body and mind of the flesh dies and returns to the earth. Only our spiritual body and soul live on. Buddha would say only your consciousness or mind travels on, but I think they were just different words about the same thing. We must prevent the dualistic mind of our earthly body of flesh from controlling us and become at one with our spiritual mind, filled only with the loving life force of our loving spiritual creator, or the divine source of love. If you don't wish to think of it as a being of love, just think of it as a divine source of love. It's pure though, and that's the thing. That's why it's so powerful. It's pure love. Then our two bodies, one made of the earth and one formed of spirit, can be in harmony and at one in purpose to bring the spiritual love and peace of heaven to earth for all children. Only true spiritual children of light and love can enter the heavenly spiritual world. All those children divided within themselves between love and hatred cannot enter. The words of Jesus can awaken and transform us. These are the words of Jesus. If you're divided within yourself between us and them, love and hate, you can't get into this other world because you have to be only love. And of course, the way he taught it was, well, I'll give you these words, and these words, if you listen to them properly, they will transform your understanding of who you really are, and they will awaken you that you have another spiritual identity with you right now, and it's going to leave when you die, so you better get into it, like getting into a new car or something to drive away when the old one, the motor blows up. So his words will save you. This is chapter 20 from the book, the Gospels, the Teachings of Jesus Unplugged. So I'll just go straight into it. First of all, of course, the problem I've discovered because I was born into the Catholic faith but left it when I was 17 because I could see they were teaching the Jewish religion and the Christian religion as being the same, which is incorrect. The God of the Jews is a two-headed God. It's not one God. There's a God of brutal war and revenge and violence and thieving. That's called Yahweh 1. And then there's Yahweh 2, which is a limited form of love, God. They hadn't yet discovered the oneness of the true divine source of love, which is pure. Jesus, of course, discovered it, and he said, don't mix this new understanding, this new wine, whatever you do, with this new understanding of God that I have, with the old wine, because you'll lose the understanding, you'll destroy it. And of course, when you look at the Bible, there's the old wine, or the Old Testament, with the new wine, in one wineskin called the Bible, and he said, don't do that. Whatever you do, don't do it. So they've done it, and of course they've mixed up the old Jewish two-headed God of war and love with the singularity of love that Jesus understood, became at one with, and that was his true teaching. Not revengeful God or anything like that, or throwing people into hell. He's just love, and this source is only love. And that's the challenge. Can you be only love? Can I be only love before our bodies die? And he gave lots of instructions about how to do it. And he did it, and others have done it as well. So we'll get into his words will save you, not his blood, by the way. A lot of Judeo-Christians say, oh, it's his blood that saves you. Jesus never said that, and I'll show you right now why. He never said it, and what it really means. His words will save you. Let's see what Jesus said and how many times he said it, shall we? John 8:51, Jesus said, truly I say to you, if anyone keeps and practices my words, he shall never see death. He's talking about awakening to your spiritual identity in your body. Luke 6:46, Jesus said, why do you call me teacher, teacher, but do not do the things I tell you? No good worshipping him, but ignoring his words about how you have to behave. John 14:23-24, Jesus said, if anyone loves me, they will keep my words and live by them, and our loving spiritual creator will love them and will go to them and make a spiritual home with them. See, it's all about becoming spiritual, and it's his words. Keep his words. John 5:24, Jesus said, he who hears my words and understands their meaning and believes in our loving spiritual creator who sent me to teach them to you will not be judged, but pass through the death experience into spiritual life. You'll not be judged simply because if you understand his words, you won't sin anymore, you won't hate anyone anymore, you won't hurt anyone anymore. So you won't receive that sort of karmic or reaping what you sow, as Jesus termed it. You won't receive any harm because you won't give any harm anymore because you're spiritual. And spiritual children of this divine loving creator, you can't hurt anyone anymore. People can hurt you, but you can't hurt them. And that's what he's saying. You've got to change. You've got to wake up before your body dies. So moving on, John 6:63, Jesus said, it is the Spirit who gives life. The flesh profits nothing. The words that I have spoken to you are spirit and they are life. My words. It's all about his words. I'm sorry the Judeo-Christians don't focus on this. Instead of, they talk about his blood saving you, which he never said that. So it's his words are spirit and they are life. He's simply saying, if you understand my words, they will awaken something in your mind, in your consciousness. They'll provide you with a way to awaken this other identity, which he is, and he said you can be too. That is, a child of a divine, spiritual, loving creator in a heavenly spiritual world just like I am. We can all be children of this divine, loving, spiritual creator, or being, or source of life and love in another spiritual world where there's no more suffering or death. But it's his words that lead you there. He says that right there. John 8:31-32, Jesus said to the Jews who had believed him, if you live out of my words, you will truly be my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. The truth of his words helps you awaken to be a spiritual child of love and nothing else. That doesn't mean we don't encounter evil children who become evil, and the sort of love we have to provide for them is maybe capture them and put them in a prison sort of thing so they stop killing or murdering. That's a form of love to do that. But we don't kill other children. That's not love. So understanding the truth that we have to be spiritual and non-violent and pacifists in a violent world, That's a really challenging, but it is possible for you to do it because Jesus did it. Mahatma Gandhi did it, Martin Luther King, there's all sorts of Buddha, there's all sorts of children who've done it. And they've left this world and they're somewhere else now, much better than this world. And Jesus just wants you to get ready to go there. John 3:11-12, Jesus said to Nicodemus, "Truly I say to you, we speak of what we know and testify of what we have seen, and you do not accept our testimony. If I told you of earthly things and you do not believe, how will you believe me if I tell you of of heavenly things?" He's constantly talking about Nicodemus. You're going to be born again into this spiritual body, this spiritual mind of love. So it's about the telling. We're trying to tell you these. I'm trying to tell you this, but you don't believe my words. Gospel of Thomas, Jesus said, "Whoever understands the meaning of these sayings will not taste death." Now, he's not saying your physical body won't die and it might be agonizing. He's not saying that won't happen. He's saying that your true identity as a spiritual child that leaves the body of flesh and blood and bones, you've got another body or spirit or soul, whatever word you wish, or Buddha says mind or consciousness. They're just words describing the same essence of who you are that leaves. And he's simply saying if your spiritual life is healthy and well and filled with love and only love, that will travel on and you'll be living out of that here, hopefully, as your primary identity before your body of flesh dies, which is a secondary identity. And that primary identity of becoming at one with this loving life force within your spiritual body and mind, and you live out of it, well, that's who you are. And that's what leaves the body. That primary fixation you have on being a spiritual child of heaven in an earth world. And that's what he's trying to get at all of us to do, is to stop being violent towards other children and all the rest of it, and the wars that are going on. It's just disgraceful. It's just hellish. What they're doing is satanic. We can't go there. We mustn't support those children in any way whatsoever. We have to give the example of love and non-violence. So he's constantly trying to help us understand that, yes, the body of flesh dies, but don't worry too much about that body. Worry about this other one that you're going to leave in. That one's only empowered by love. And if you're not living out of love, it's not empowered. It hasn't got any strength in it. And when you leave, it'll be too weak, perhaps, to reach heaven, you might say. And you may have to sort of undergo some other problematic cleansing, hellish realizations. So in the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus said, "Blessed is the one who came to life before coming to life. If you listen to my sayings and understand them, even these stones will serve you." So blessed is the one who came to life before coming to life. He's saying, if you awaken to your spiritual identity now while you're on the earth in a body of flesh, full of blood and bones and all sorts of things, then if you do that before you come to spiritual life in a heavenly world, then you've really been very successful. You become your primary identity. Blessed is the one who came to life before coming to life in the heavenly spiritual world. If you're spiritual now, you're going to enter a spiritual world where there's no suffering or wars or guns or bombs or any children that are satanic. They have to go somewhere else and be cleansed. So blessed is the one who understands this. You become a person of peace and love in this world, even though it's very difficult and challenging, but you do it and you've already come to spiritual life. You're already alive. And then again, he says you won't die. You're already fully filled with love and this loving life force which supports your spiritual body. We don't see it yet until we leave the body, until the body of flesh stops working, and this piece of meat in the middle here called the heart muscle, once that piece of meat stops moving, that's it. I black out. I have no connection to this material world again at all, and my spirit leaves, and I'm in the presence of the spiritual source of my life. Earth goes to earth, spirit goes to spirit. So I better get ready. John 4:13-14, Jesus said to the Samaritan woman, "Everyone who drinks of this earthly water shall thirst again, but whoever drinks from the living spiritual water that I shall give them shall never thirst again. And that water that I shall give them shall cause a flow of spiritual water to well up inside them, lifting them up into everlasting life." This living water actually comes through, obviously, his words going in my ear and coming into me, in my spiritual mind. or soul or spiritual body, and his water is what brings the seed of spirituality alive. If you have a seed, you've got to have water. So the seed of being spiritual is in us all. He waters it with the words. It brings it to life. That's why his words are just so important, not his blood. You see all these sayings about words. These are all his sayings. It's not my opinion. But it is I agree with him, though. I better agree with him. I'll be in trouble when I see him. Gospel of Thomas, Jesus said, whoever drinks from my mouth will become like me, and I shall be like that person, and what is hidden will be revealed to that one. Whoever drinks from my mouth, that is to say, whoever hears my words that are coming out of my mouth and understands them, they will be the same as me. Jesus wasn't anything that was like unique in the sense of he's the only one. That would destroy his whole message. He is a child, a spiritual child of the divine loving creator. He said, oh, we could all be like this. We could all be like me. Everyone can be like me. And we can all be brothers and sisters. That's the real message. And as he says here, whoever drinks from my mouth, whoever listens to my words, takes them into yourself. You drink the words into your mind, into your soul, into your heart, into your spirit. You will become like me, he says. And I shall be like that person. I'll be like you. And what is hidden will be revealed to you. If you understand what he's saying, you'll realize, oh, I've got a mind of only love. Oh, I didn't know I could be only loved, because I like to sort of, hate a few people and condemn a few people, and I don't like those people. I got this other mind now. It's just I just love everyone, even though they're doing bad things, but I don't want to hurt them anymore or anything like that. You love them out of their own darkness, you might say. You become a light in the world, as Jesus said. So it's a beautiful thing. His words are so beautiful. So we've got here, if you drink the words from his mouth into yourself, they will awaken, like watering a seed that comes to life, which is like the mustard seed, and it grows into a tree of heaven. He's talking about you. If you listen to his words, they'll water you, and they'll bring you alive to your spiritual identity before your body of flesh dies. That's the trick to it. I mean, you've got to do it before the body of flesh dies, otherwise you're out of time. And then, of course, how far you've gotten, well, it depends on each individual. If anyone is thirsty, in John 7:37-38, Jesus said, if anyone is thirsty, let them come to me and drink. He who believes in me, from his innermost spiritual being will flow rivers of living spiritual water. From his innermost spiritual being. See, Jesus says the treasure is buried in the field of the dirt, of the body, of the flesh. The spiritual body and soul mind of who you are is inside you right now. Today, right this instant, if you're watching this right now, you've got a spiritual body that's going to leave your body of flesh when it's dead. And the thing is, are you ready to enter into this beautiful world? All you have to do, Jesus said, is love everyone. Don't hurt anyone anymore. And yes, we have challenges with people who are still, unfortunately, satanic. They've become beasts of the flesh. They've gone into the darkness. They're dark figures, shadow figures with no spiritual life in them. And we have to deal with them as best we can, but we can't become like them. We have to live out of this love. We have to be prepared to die to the flesh. So that's the beautiful thing about his words. They're so powerful and so beautiful. That's why I've always loved them. When I left the Catholic Church, I never left him. I loved his words, and I love Buddhist teachings and any teachings of any religion that's about pacifism. But I have no interest whatsoever in gods that slaughter their enemies and that sort of rubbish. The Jewish God in particular is a real problem. So anyway, and so are the others. Anyone who does that is just, they're lost. They've got no idea what they're doing. So there you go. If anyone is thirsty, let them come to me and drink. So here we go in this beautiful sower of the word parable, because it's sower of the seed. But again, he's talking about his words that save you. In this parable, Jesus uses seeds to represent the spiritual words and way of our loving spiritual creator that he was trying to sow in the hearts, minds and souls of the children. Some rejected the words outright. Some only followed them for a while. Others knew about them but ignored them. And only the last group listened to the words, understood their transformational meaning, and became spiritual. So the sower of the seed parable, it actually says it's about the words. It's my words. It's all about his words. And the ones who really hear them are the ones who bring forth this crop of beautiful spiritual actions in this world. They become the beautiful people, who don't hurt anyone. They're really kind, they're generous, they're not greedy. They'll do anything to help you. They're the ones who understand the words, or whether they're Jesus or Buddha or anyone who's talking about pacifism and love. They get it. They know that's the valuable thing before they die, before the flesh dies, is to be this loving child before the flesh dies, because they are then consolidating their spiritual identity of love, which lives on in the spiritual body, because the spiritual body is only empowered by love. The physical body is empowered by potatoes, beans, pumpkins, water, gases, and the brain up here is dualistic. There's two hemispheres. The whole human body is dualistic: pleasure, pain, hate, love. It's dualistic. It's very dangerous. Keep your body healthy and the mind healthy, the brain healthy, and then you can choose to hate and kill if you want to, become a beast of the flesh, satanic if you want to. You're only going to end up suffering after you die. Or choose to love if you want to, and end up going to a much more beautiful world. I think that's the best one to choose. Mark 10:45, Jesus said, "For the child of our loving spiritual Creator did not come to be served, but to serve others, by teaching many how to be set free from sin, and dedicate his life to bring this about, like a ransom paid to release someone from captivity." This is, of course, twisted by the Judeo-Christians. Jesus is simply saying he's dedicated his life to help teach children how to become spiritual and move out of this world into a far more beautiful heavenly world that's spiritual, of love. And the ransom he paid, it's not just his death on the cross, the ransom for his sins. They twisted around, the Judeo-Christians. Part of the ransom he paid was simply his dedication. He became a teacher. And that's a dedication to be. If you ask any teacher how dedicated you have to be to teach a class of 30 children, they'll tell you it's a job of dedication. It's a dedication to teach someone this new knowledge. So he dedicated, and it was like a ransom paid to release them from the captivity of ignorance. So his dedication releases you from the captivity of ignorance, not knowing who you really are. It's not about a ransom paid for your sins, which is what the Jewish Christians keep banging on about, but never mind. You're already clean and free of sin because of the words which I have spoken to you. Now, I met a lot of Jewish Christians. They're called Judeo-Christians, but they worship the Jewish God and as being the God of Jesus, which of course it's not. But here is in John 15:3, Jesus said, "You are already clean and free of sin because of the words which I have spoken to you." He's not saying you will be clean after I die on the cross and my blood's all sprinkled all over you. He's not saying that at all. He's saying quite the opposite. It's his words that free everyone from sin, because if you understand his words, you become spiritual and you can't hurt anyone anymore. His blood on the cross is another matter altogether. He crucified, he allowed them to crucify his body of flesh, and then he arose and appeared to the disciples in a spiritual body, which he said, you've got two different bodies. But here he is saying, you are already clean and free of sin because of the words which I have spoken to you. He's talking to the disciples, and he's given them a bit of a compliment. By this stage at the Last Supper, after 3 years, they're beginning to understand a bit. They had too long time because they were, Jewish, and they were worshipping a two-headed God, a violent war God, and a limited God of love. So he had to get them out of that into the singularity. But there's the proof that it's his words that free you from sin, not his blood on the cross. That's a different matter altogether. That's about your body of flesh dies, you may as well feed it to the vultures. You've got another body. That's the one you have to be ready to leave in, and that one's only empowered by love, so you better become loving. That's what he said. Don't hate and don't hurt, and certainly don't go to war like all the satanic children up in the wars going on in of course the slaughter at Gaza, the genocide there, and the Russians, and the Israeli army, the whole lot of them, the Hamas. They're all satanic children. That's who they worship. They got the war god. They kill other children. Followers of Jesus never do that. Okay, moving on. Jesus said in John 15:7, "If you live in spirit with me, and my teachings and words live in you, ask whatever you desire, and it will be done for you." So this is, of course, part of this powerful faith in another world. But he says, again, if my teachings and words live in you, you've got to have them in you to even have belief in another world and life after death, don't you? I mean, that's to begin with. And then the connection comes through having the inside of the cup clean, as he says. The spiritual body, which is like water in the vase, the physical body, if you think of it like a vase, a clay vase, and you pour water into it, everyone has a physical body, no matter what the shape is, big, round, fat, tall, skinny, small, baby, elderly. If you pour water into that body, it'll fill that body or that vase perfectly. Doesn't matter what the vase shape is, the water will take the same, it'll take the shape of every single vase. The same water from a bucket, you pour it into every different looking vase, the same water takes the same form of the physical vase. That's our spiritual body. Our spiritual bodies are different to our physical bodies, but they're in with the physical body. And that's what Jesus tries to help us understand. The spiritual body, the water in the vase is going to leave. The vase itself, the clay vase, literally the clay vases mostly, are made of dirt, and they return to the dirt when they smash apart. So anyway, so if you live in spirit with me, you see, in your spiritual body of love, you live in that with me, and my teachings and words live in you. It's all about becoming like him and become spiritual and full of love. This is a beautiful one. My words are the rock to build your life on. Again, it's his words. He's saying it's his words that save you. Jesus taught, everyone who comes to me and hears my words, understands them and puts them into practice, will be like a wise man who, while building his home, dug down deep and laid the foundation on a rock. And the rain fell and the floods came, the winds blew and beat violently against that home, but could not shift it, and it did not fall because it had been founded on the rock of his words. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not understand and practice them will be like a foolish man who built his home upon sand. And the rains came, the winds blew, and the floods came and beat upon that home, and it fell down, and great was its fall. So here, of course, he's saying my spiritual words will stabilize you against everything that comes against you in the world, and you'll leave the world through the death experience, but you'll be okay. But someone who doesn't have this sort of spiritual understanding, they're not living out of their spiritual body of love and mind of love, and they're just, possibly getting involved in bad things, or they hate and love. They're like on sand. It's unstable. And the things of this world can really destroy their spiritual life. Particularly if you get tangled up in wars, all you warmongers. Oh, you got no idea. They got no idea where they're heading, those children. Anyway, never mind. We'll pray for them and hope they drop their guns, all the Israeli soldiers, and go home tomorrow. And Hamas too. And Russia too. It's an individual decision of every soldier to kill other children. You don't have to do what Netanyahu says or Putin or anyone. Anyway, that's another story. The home that cannot fall is our spiritual body and soul mind of love, empowered only by the loving spiritual life force of our loving spiritual creator. That's the home. He's talking about you building this home. It's a spiritual home, and it can't fail or fall if it's made out of true love. You're honest and good and kind. You don't hurt anyone. That cannot fall. It can't fail because it's belonging to another world of perfect love, and it'll get you through this world. It's singular. It's only one thing, love. Jesus is saying we have to dig deep down beneath our body of flesh identity to find this hidden treasure of our true eternal spiritual life and identity. And it is his words and spiritual teachings that reveal our true spiritual identity to us and how we can become at one with it and be saved. He is a rock we can rely on for support, guidance and truth. His words awaken us and bring our spirits alive. This is the whole thing about Jesus. And all great spiritual teachers, they have to give us words. They're sounds, and the sounds are words, and the words convey meanings. And then our minds, our pathetic minds, have to try to understand what this incredible spiritual being of love, Jesus or Buddha or whoever it may be, whatever faith or whatever non-faith practice, but they're only love. They've got to use words to try to help me understand how to become like them. And it is the words that transform you. They help you understand a different identity that you didn't even know existed. You didn't know I could just love the enemy. We kill the enemy. Oh no, Jesus says. Some Buddhists say, don't do that. Don't do that. They're already lost. They're already in the dark. They've got no idea where they're going. You must be a light in the world and be love. They're already lost. They're already in the dark. They're just beasts of the flesh. All flesh dies, rots and stinks. So they're living out of the flesh, which is death in the end. You're living out of life, which is spirit. You've got to be an example to them and even love the enemies. And you can only do that if you're in a spiritual body. You won't do it if you're in the body of flesh, because you're frightened they're going to kill your body of flesh, which is going to die anyway one day. And the thing is, you have to be an example against that and say, no, I'm not picking up the gun. You know, you'll have to kill my body, you know, if that's what you want to do. I'm going to try to stop you and convince you not to do it, or run away and hide, but I'm not going to be like you. You have to be like me, you know, because one day you're going to die too. So Jesus, of course, died on the cross. And, of course, for the first 300 years, no Christian fought back and killed the Romans or the Jews who were murdering the Christians until Constantine destroyed the pacifist message. So Jesus' words held good until Constantine. Then the church leaders were corrupted by Constantine, and then Christians could go to war again like the Jews, and they became Jewish Christians from then on. And Jewish Christians have been going to war ever since. And Jesus said, don't do that. And that's why they don't listen to his words. That's why I'm writing the book about his words. Many things in this dangerous material world of earth can overcome and destroy our body of flesh, but only our own sin, evil or wrongdoings, can damage our spiritual life. So no matter what earthly storm comes against spiritual children during their life here on earth in a body of flesh, it can never really overcome them, as they have another spiritual life and body to enjoy in the heavenly spiritual world of love after the death of the body of the flesh. And if you don't believe this, of course, you probably won't do it. But if you really believe in Jesus, and his words are brilliant and beautiful and transformational, and if everyone followed it, then there'd be no more wars, no armaments industry. So they are logical, sensible, and profoundly beautiful. Who's going to follow it? Well, I will. Who else is? But a child who has built their identity or home out of only earthly and worldly material things will face a complete destruction of their identity at the time of the death experience of their body of flesh. Flesh only gives birth to flesh. Well, those children who have established a solid spiritual life and body based on the rock of his words will not be destroyed at the time of their death experience, but be reborn as a fully spiritual child of our loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world. Spirit only gives birth to spirit. So the spiritual being or life force of love is spiritual. We have a spiritual body planted in us. All we have to do is become at one with it, live out of love against all the challenges in the world, all the things that come against us. We still have to remain loving. And then we'll be okay after the body dies. But if you live out of only the flesh, worship the flesh, you're greedy, you're a billionaire, you've got all this sort of stuff, you're rock ape power, beast of the flesh like Vladimir or Netanyahu, you're murdering and slaughtering and killing children because you're so powerful. Unfortunately, all death of the flesh, there's nothing left after that of that identity. It's wiped out. So they're beasts of the flesh, these murderers, these warmongers, all the soldiers, they're all beasts of the flesh. All flesh dies, rots and stinks. Only the soldiers who quit the war and go home, they're the ones who are the bravest. They drop the guns and go home. They say, I'm not going to take part. Any Israeli soldier who gets out of the army and quits and says, I deserts and goes home, they're the bravest Israeli soldier in Israel. Not the ones who murder and slaughter and drop bombs on innocent people. And Hamas, same thing. Any Hamas fighter who gives up, goes home and loves their family, they're the bravest Hamas fighter in the world because they've become peaceful. All the ones who murder and slaughter, they're just all beasts of the flesh. They're all satanic. There's nothing else you can say about it. I'm very sorry for them. They've got no idea what's waiting for them after they die. They think, I don't know what they think. I don't know. But hell does exist. It's a burning realization. And it's not very pleasant as far as I understand it. Okay, so if you build your identity on the flesh, unfortunately, it's devoid of life because when it dies, there's no life in it. But when you build your life on the spiritual body of love, love is different. It's a different life force. It's a different power. It's a different energy. It's another whole world. But it's here inside us if we just bring it, awaken it with the words of Jesus. So you've got to wake it up. And his words help you do that. Not his blood, his words. Now, we've just read 17 independent sayings of Jesus that clearly state it is his words and teachings that save your spiritual life if you just listen, understand their meanings, live out of them, and are transformed by them. It is his words and teachings that awaken you to who you really are, a spiritual child of our loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world of love on earth, just like him. He's trying to help you be just like him. Without them, you would not know how to behave as a spiritual child, so could not become one. And once you're a spiritual child, you can't sin anymore. It's impossible because your mind is only love. So you can't hurt anyone or do anything wrong to yourself or bad to anyone. That's how sin's destroyed, by becoming a spiritual child. How do you become a spiritual child? Well, we've got 17 quotes of Jesus saying, it's my words that do it. My words. You won't find 17 quotes in the gospel saying, my blood changes you, my blood changes you, my blood changes you, my blood wakes you up. You won't find 17 quotes at all. You'll only find one certain quote at the Last Supper, but that's about a different thing again. So I get disappointed when these Judeo-Christians keep banging on about his blood saves you. That's a different thing. His blood on the cross helps you understand that your body of flesh is just food for the vultures and the worms. It can die and it doesn't matter as long as your spiritual body is alive and well. It doesn't matter. If your spiritual body is not alive and well yet, it does matter. You don't want to die until you're in your spiritual body of love and you're doing your best to love everyone. That means you're committed to being spiritual. You won't hurt, you'll forgive those who hurt you. I mean, you've got to overcome a lot of obstacles, but he talks about that. He talks about forgiving. That's his words are the things that save you because they help you understand how to be spiritual. His instructions are beautiful. So I get a bit disappointed when I just hear him talk about his blood all the time. You know? It's a Jewish overlay. So his words and teachings, where are we now? His words and teachings describe all the characteristics such as forgiveness, non-violence, compassion, generosity, equanimity, and love that must be present in us to bring our spirit alive as our primary eternal spiritual identity that we need to become at one with to be able to enter the heavenly spiritual world. If Jesus just died on the cross and shed his blood but said nothing, we would have no way of knowing how to get to the heavenly spiritual world. You've got to be logical about these spiritual things. It's his words. If you didn't have his words, do I forgive someone once and then hit them in the head if they hit me in the head? Jesus says, no, always forgive and don't hit them back in the head. Don't turn the other cheek. His words help me understand how to behave as a heavenly child on earth. And if I do that, against the odds, against the challenges, against the oncoming onslaught of evil, and I've had people hurt me and rob me, etc. However, I forgive them and I pray for them because obviously they're not full of love. So they're not in their spiritual identity. So they're in the dark and they're in the flesh, and all flesh dies, rots and stinks. So you've got to pray for those people and forgive them. So Jesus gives us the instructions to become spiritual, which then you no longer sin, and that frees you from sin by understanding how to become just like him by understanding his words. He could die 1,000 times on the cross and I could still go and rob banks or something. If I don't stop robbing banks or whatever bad thing you're doing, it wouldn't matter how many times you died. I'd have to, if you're sinning, the only way to stop sinning is stop sinning. Don't do it anymore. And they are his words. He just says it. With the woman that he forgave in adultery, he didn't condemn her. He said, well, go your way. I don't condemn you either, but sin no more. He just warns her, but stop sinning though. You got yourself in trouble here. I've got you out of it, but stop sinning. And he says it to the guy with the lame leg. The same thing. He sees him later on at the temple and he says, well, you're okay now, but don't sin because something worse could happen to you. Your spiritual body could be in big trouble, your spiritual identity. So that was just your physical body, but don't sin because something worse could happen to you if you sin. That was just a physical injury that I healed for you. So he warns people, but it's your spiritual body. That's the thing you've got to protect more than anything. Look after your body, sure. Don't let it get hurt and don't put it in danger. But they all die. they all go back to the earth. It's the spiritual body you leave in. Get into it, he said. How do I get into it, Jesus? Love everyone. Oh, what? Oh, that's shocking. No, it's not, he says. It's great. But it's going to be hard. And many children still don't get it. Why did he shed his blood? Well, why did he shed his blood? Why did he die on the cross voluntarily? The first and primary reason Jesus allowed his temporary body of flesh to be killed and shed his blood was to show us that we all have a spiritual life and body after the death of the body of flesh. He had to shed his blood in this way to set his spiritual body free from his body of flesh. He couldn't commit suicide, and he didn't want to wait until old age or sickness ended his physical life. He also knew they were trying to stone him to death for blasphemy any chance they could get, and it would get harder to avoid it the more he spoke the truth about the false two-headed God of the Jews. So he may have felt that threat was urgent enough and the time was right to reveal the actual reality of what he had been trying to teach the disciples all along. That we all have two very different bodies with us right now, but only one lives on to reap as it has sown, and it is only spiritual. So that was his sacrifice, which was an incredible, courageous and sacrifice, and it does help save our life. But it's not in the way the Judeo-Christians have taught it. It's the way of his words. The body of flesh is worth nothing. He says that. Don't worry about anyone who can kill your body. Worry about your soul. In the teachings of there are two in a single bed, there are two in a field, there are two women at a millstone, he says one of the bodies of that woman, that person grinding at the millstone, her physical body dies, is sent forth. And the only thing you can do with that is feed it to the vultures. He says that. It's dead. It's finished. The other body, though, leaves her body, the spiritual body, and is taken to be near to. That's in the correct Greek translation. Taken to be near to. The spiritual body goes taken to be near to the source of the spiritual body, which is this spiritual being in a spiritual world, to see how you've gone. Are you ready to come in? Are you full of love? Because that's how you get in. The other body, made of the earth, bones, chemicals, water, minerals, calcium, that all disintegrates into the earth because it comes from the earth. It's formed from the earth. It returns to the earth. It's finished. And it's given us time, hopefully, given us precious time to become spiritual, to leave. It's a bit like having a caterpillar's body long enough to realise, oh, I'm a butterfly later on. And if you realise that before the caterpillar body dies, you'll be fine. You'll come out of the caterpillar body, spread some wings and fly away like an angel. So that's a beautiful universal two-body message for sure, a spiritual message. A lot of people know about it. The caterpillar transforms into a butterfly. That's the physical body dies, the caterpillar, and it becomes a butterfly and flies through the air. So Jesus talks about this all the time, all the time. So that's why he had to die on the cross, because it was just getting too dangerous. They were trying to kill him, and so he did it very much on the Passover again. So it was very symbolic, and these disciples could sort of use that to help the Jews come out of their, dualistic religion. So that is why his teachings concentrate on becoming love, as our loving spiritual creator is perfect love. And so, if we really want to be her spiritual children and enter the heavenly spiritual world, we must become perfect love also in a dangerous dualistic world of love and hate. And there's the challenge for all of us who are followers of Jesus or Buddha or any great pacifist teacher. We have to remain non-violent and full of love in the face of violence. Not easy, but if enough of us did it, well, there wouldn't be any violence, would there? and we only need her loving, I say her, God, she, he, beyond gender. I like the word her because you might say God gives birth to our spiritual life. Well, women give birth, so it's fair enough to say God's female. My spiritual life comes sort of into existence through her, through God, through this spiritual being. And also women in the world rarely start wars. Females rarely start. We got rock apes like Hitler and Putin and Netanyahu, Hamas, all these, rock ape males. They love killing once they become beasts of the flesh instead of spiritual children. Whereas women hardly ever do that. So I prefer to think of God as a female form because they're more intelligent, obviously, than us males. More full of love, because they give birth, you see. They give birth to children. So they don't want to see their children go to war and die, murder other children. They don't, the motherly instinct. Anyway, so we're in a dangerous world, and we have to be spiritual and full of love. Oh dear, that's difficult. And we only need her loving spiritual life force to empower our spiritual bodies, not potatoes and beans, water and gases, which belong to the material world. This is the other thing. There is a spiritual life force that we can connect with, which is from heaven, and that's what gives you the spiritual strength and courage to face adversity in the flesh, whether it's sickness or violence. It's the spiritual connection to heaven and love. Heaven is a place of no violence, remember. So there's no hatred there. There's no guns or bombs or armaments industry there. And if you rock up to the gates of heaven with a gun in your hand, sorry, you've got to go back somewhere else. You've got to go downstream. So the thing is, we have to absolutely be ready to enter that world. But our spiritual body is a life force. It's filled with a spiritual life force because it's a spiritual body. Whatever you eat won't necessarily affect your spiritual body. But I think being a vegetarian is good because you don't have to sort of murder innocent animals, so that's good, and cause suffering to them. So I certainly promote that. Try to be a vegetarian. Again, it's to do with peace, and you don't want to hurt the animals, and that feeds into your spiritual identity of love, you see. So vegetarianism for me is primary, so you don't hurt other creatures, don't cause them suffering. Don't kill them, don't murder them, and then burn their dead bodies and eat their muscles and things. Don't do that. Eat beans and things. Be vegetarian if you can. Primarily because it's a way to consolidate your identity of love. If you don't hurt animals, then there's a better chance you won't hurt other people. So that's the way I recommend be vegetarian for that reason. However, so we only need this loving spiritual life force for our spiritual body because it's a different body, completely different life force. So that's what you need. But that comes from heaven. It's the wellspring within that bubbles up inside you, but it only bubbles up inside you if there's no rubbish on top of it, or garbage, or you're killing children like all the murdering soldiers up there in the Israeli army, Hamas, the Russian army and the Ukraine. They're all murderers now. They've all murdered and killed other children, so they've covered up the wellspring of love inside themselves, and I can't help them. They're going to go to hell, all of them, if they don't stop doing that. And the hell is a place of burning realizations. They're cut off from the divine, and it's too late, and then they have to undergo cleansing. I don't believe they're eternally there, but they don't understand how horrific it's going to be because they're going to be in the presence of what it's all about. This divine life force will be there, and then they'll realize what they did, how horrific it was, how satanic it was. And there are children in heaven, and they're not there. And that's when the burning realizations of their own consciousness opens up, and the divine presence reveals to them the evil that they've done, and then they experience what they've caused to others, themselves. That's my understanding of hell, and that is hell. And you're cut off, and they're in the dark because they've covered themselves in filth, their spiritual body. It's a bit like they've caked the vase in layers and layers of dog manure, dog droppings, and their spiritual body is in the dark from all this filthy murdering they're doing. We're talking about the warmongers now, because they're obviously some of the most evil children in the world. And so they're covered themselves in this filth, and they are in the darkness that they created themselves. And then the divine spiritual life force and love shines on that filth, and then slowly reveals to them every bit of filth that they created. Every child that's crushed under a piece of concrete in Gaza that the Israelis are murdering, every Hamas child that was slaughtered by the Hamas, every Israeli child that was slaughtered by the Hamas, those Hamas children who did that, they'll experience the death of that Israeli child. The Israeli soldiers will experience the death of the Palestinian children that are murdered and slaughtered. They'll all experience the murders of the others that they've killed. That is hell. And it can happen because this life force knows everything, is omniscient. So this life force can just transfer into their actual consciousness and their mind the experience that they've caused to the other child. And they can't get out of it though, because their body of flesh is dead and they're in just this state of consciousness, and that's hell. And the trouble is, if you don't believe that, then you're in really serious danger. You better believe it. better to love. Drop the guns and go home, all you warmongers. So that is why his teachings concentrate on becoming love, as our loving spiritual creator is perfect love. And so if we really want to be her spiritual children and enter the heavenly spiritual world, we must become perfect love, also in a dangerous dualistic world of love and hate. It's a really important message. He says in the Sermon on the Mount, this divine loving being is only love. Her entire consciousness, or his, is only love. Like the sun that rises on the good and on the evil, is kind to the ungrateful and the evil. It's like the rain that falls on the just and the unjust. That's how perfect this loving being is. And then he says, if you want to join in this world with this loving being, your love must be as perfect as hers or his. He says that. You've got to become just love. So all you need is love. Wasn't there some famous group in the 60s who said that? And we only need her loving spiritual life force to empower our spiritual bodies, not potatoes, beans, water and gases. And that is why he died on the cross to his flesh and then appeared to the disciples briefly in his spiritual body, not his body of flesh, so they could literally see what he was talking about and then teach others this spiritual truth. When he appeared to the disciples, he had a spiritual body, not a body of flesh. It's John gives you the clue, the Gospel of John. He appears to Mary at the tomb and in his spiritual body. Mary doesn't recognize him. None of them do when he first appears because he looks different. He's sort of glowing or something. But he speaks and then they understand it's him. Oh, it's Jesus. And Mary goes to hug him and she goes, oh, teacher, teacher. And Jesus goes, oh, don't try to hug me, Mary. You can't. And of course there's a bit about, I haven't yet ascended to my Father. But Mary couldn't hug him because he was in a spiritual body. His body of flesh was dead back in the tomb and it didn't rise. And Mary couldn't hug him because she was still predominantly in the flesh. And John gives you that clue there. It's very important. That's another chapter I've written about. He rose in the spiritual body, not the body of flesh. And the disciples had to hide it for good reason, Anyway, so that's the story there. So he had to die in order to, the disciples had to see him die on the cross, and then he appeared in a spiritual body. Then they checked the tomb, found the dead body, and said, uh-oh, what's going on? He had two bodies. He was trying to tell them all the time, and that was when they really understood what he had to demonstrate it. That's why he died on the cross, to appear to them very briefly in another body. And it was spiritual and it was perfect. There was nothing wrong with it. It wasn't the body of flesh. So this is what he meant when he said at the Last Supper, take this bread. This is my body of flesh given up for you. Take this cup and drink, for this is my blood of the new covenant, which we poured out for many. So his body of flesh, he gives it up to show them, look, I'll let them kill my body. I'll give it up for you to show you, I'll appear to you in my spiritual body, which he did at the Transfiguration and walking on the water. They saw his spiritual body. He knew his was alive though, mine still isn't, and maybe yours isn't, but we can make it come alive like he did and become very, very spiritual while we're in the flesh. And the other part is take this cup and drink, for this is the blood of the new covenant. Now the new covenant is a bad translation of the Greek and should be written in all Gospels as the new disposition. This is important. So drink, for this is my blood of the new disposition, which we poured out for many. So he's going to pour the blood of his flesh out for a new disposition. Now the definition of the word disposition means the natural qualities of a person's character. So he's saying, I'm going to pour my blood of my identity, my flesh identity. I'm going to let that die. I'm going to pour it out to show you a new disposition, a new natural quality of a person's character, which is you've got a spiritual body. I'm going to pour my blood of my flesh out, which is feed for the vultures anyway when it dies, to show you the new definition of disposition, meaning the natural qualities of a person's character. It's a new identity. It's a spiritual identity. That's the new covenant, the new spiritual body you've got. Flesh gives birth to flesh. Spirit gives birth to spirit. Marvel not that I tell you, you must be born again from above. Spirit. And that's why he died on the cross. He knew he had two bodies, That's what was so special about him. And that was it was courageous. And he does sort of save your life in a sense. I mean, that's only part of it. But he showed the disciples, I've got another body in some of you. Look, I'm going to have to demonstrate it to you because they can kill me any minute. So I'll make it sort of pretty dramatic. And everyone will know I died on the cross. It'll be really public. We'll make it really public. So everyone will know. But then I'll appear to you. And then you can tell everyone. But there's a problem, of course, with his body. They had to hide it. But that's in another chapter. But it is important that he died on the cross, and he does save us in a way by helping me understand, Chris, don't worry about if your body dies, you've got another body. I demonstrated this to the disciples, and they reported it. So that's what it was about. That was what the cross was all about. And it is massively powerful. I mean, if you believe that, then that's going to help you get into your spiritual body. So his death was important on the cross, but it was a sacrifice of his body to reveal to the disciples he had another body. And so do you and I. That's what it was all about. And it was an extremely courageous thing to do. But it was about you've got another body. So that's the new covenant. It's really about, the definition means the natural qualities of a person's character. And so his blood of the new character. The new character is you've got a spiritual body. That's your new identity. So his body of flesh dies, the blood's poured out, but he leaves in his spiritual body. That's the new character. And he appears to the disciples not in his body of flesh, but in his spiritual body. That's why Mary couldn't hug him, you know. The new identity will have different natural characteristics which he was constantly teaching them about than the ones they were familiar with in the body of flesh. Love for all, even the enemy, compassion, forgiveness, non-violence, and others. Those natural characteristics of a living spiritual child of our loving spiritual creator with a born-again spiritual body and soul mind of love. They're the characteristics that I need to become at one with, and I get the instructions from his words. The fact that he had a spiritual body after he let his body of flesh be murdered and tortured to death on the cross inspires me to get ready to also leave my body in my spiritual body following his words and become spiritual and filled with love. And then my body will be on a cross too, whether it's illness or an accident or whatever. That'll be the cross. That'll be the cross of my death. As that crucifixion was the cross of his death. Somehow or other, all of us will have to be on the cross of death. And whatever it is, we're going to leave in our spiritual body. And the thing is the spiritual body in the light and the love shining on you from the spiritual being in heaven? Or have you covered your spiritual body in filth, like all these murderers in the wars? They're all murderers, filthy murderers. They're covered in filth. They can't enter heaven. No matter who they are, what side they're on, it's irrelevant. They're murdering and killing. So they're not full of spiritual life. They're living out of the flesh. All flesh dies, rots and stinks. And it's devoid of life at the end of the journey. Only the spirit has life in it at the end of the journey. But if you've covered it in filth and darkness, you are going to be in the darkness. My understanding is that's not going to be very nice. Anyway, we just try. All I can do is encourage all those Israeli soldiers to desert, go home, desert the army, and the generals in Russia. You know, throw Putin in a cell, a padded cell. He's obviously a psychotic killer. Just stop killing. Stop doing that. Go home. It's the universal soldier. They're all to blame. Taking orders from a crackpot, that doesn't excuse you for murdering and killing. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that, but it sure doesn't. Flesh only gives birth to flesh. Spirit only gives birth to spirit. So he could only reveal the two different bodies to them if they witnessed the one that died, the body of flesh, and then soon after saw the one released from the body of flesh that lived on, the spiritual body. That is why he shed his blood of flesh. That is why he shed his body of flesh blood, because he knew he had another spiritual body. He had to do it that way. They saw it, everyone witnessed him die. The flesh died, dead, no life in it. Heart stopped beating, finished. It's already started decaying. Then he appears to them in another body. And that's how he had to do it. In order for them to understand that his words, they didn't quite understand what he's saying. So he demonstrated it. And it's a massive, courageous thing to do. Massive. And it's a wonder that it's survived. But it survived because they had to say he rose in a body of flesh. And that's in another chapter. I explain why they did that. For good reason. He was indeed extremely courageous and totally selfless to do this for all of us, to help guide us out of this dualistic material world of love and hate, pleasure and pain, life and death, to enter the heavenly, eternal spiritual world of love in our spiritual body of love. His last teaching was this extraordinary manifestation and culmination of all his words to reveal the ultimate truth about our life on earth and its purpose, and how to become just like him and follow him to heaven. As he said, the truth will set you free. You've got another body, get into it before your body of flesh dies, but it's only empowered by love. So you have to only be love, and then it will come alive. And if you follow my words and become alive to the Spirit, you will not die, because your primary identity on the earth will be love. That's what he's talking about. Let's see now, Jewish overlays. John 15:3. Jesus said, "You are already clean and free of sin because of the words which I have spoken to you." Now, this is the bit about the blood that a lot of these organizations, these Jewish Christian or Judeo-Christian organizations that say the God of the Jews is the God of Jesus, which is, of course, a misunderstanding, to be polite, or just a total lie is the actual correct way to talk about it. The original authors of the Gospels were heavily focused on trying to bring the Jewish children out from worshipping the two-headed God of love and war to follow the one true loving spiritual creator that Jesus was at one with as her child. So they used Jewish overlays to describe Jesus in a way that would resonate with Jews, seeing him through a Jewish lens, in the hope they would follow him and his new spiritual way of love and see him as the promised Jewish Messiah. The strong emphasis by many Judeo-Christians still to this day that only his blood on the cross washes our sins away comes from the regular Jewish sacrifices of animals made at the two-headed God temple to wash their sins away. And in the Old Jewish Testament, Book of Numbers 1-9, is the ritual of killing and sacrificing an unblemished red heifer in which no defect can be found. They then kill it, burn it, and gather the ashes and place them in a clean place, and they use the ashes to purify themselves of all sin. This is overlaid directly onto Jesus by Judeo-Christians who believe in the Jewish God and have Jesus and his God as an add-on, who say he was perfect, unblemished, and free of sin. And the death of his body sacrificed on the cross purifies them of sin in the same way the red heifer purified the Jews of sin. It's a complete Jewish overlay. The authors, modern, supposedly they're Christians, but they're Jewish Christians. They shouldn't say that. That's a Jewish thing. It's nothing to do with why he died on the cross. He doesn't, his body on the cross doesn't purify you of any sin whatsoever. You've got to stop sinning. He does purify you by helping you understand how to stop sinning. And of course, part of that is to say sorry. That's the first part. He said, unless you forgive those who have sinned against you, the divine loving creator can't forgive you. So you have to take responsibility, but he's there with you. But this sacrifice of the red heifer, they sacrifice it and they put their ashes on them, and they're cleansed of all sin by murdering an animal. Well, so they murdered Jesus. So these Judeo-Christians think, he was murdered, so he cleanses us of all sin. He leads you into how not to sin anymore. You must clean the inside of the cup out, he said. You must do it. He didn't say, I'll clean the inside of the cup out for you. He said, you have to clean the inside of the cup out. That's where all the filth is. Your thoughts, your bad thoughts, murder, adultery, thieving, these things inside you, inside your cup. You have to clean them out. They're his words. So I don't like it when these, and that's why so many, in Australia, the Catholic churches, the Christian churches, they're all dying because young people they're too intelligent to follow this sort of stuff. But when you talk about it correctly, what he's really talking about, it's logical, it makes perfect sense, and perhaps they'll come and follow him again, although the churches are shutting down in Australia. It's very sad. They're just not teaching it correctly because they're teaching two different religions, the Jewish religion and the religion of Jesus, the spiritual way of love of Jesus. They mix it in with the old wine. It's a mess. This is overlaid directly onto Jesus. So that's a big problem, that they look back at the old Jewish religion and keep sticking it on Jesus, which Jesus said, don't mix this new wine with the old wine, whatever you do. And they do. I try to tell them, but they don't listen to me. Jesus never says this. Instead, as we have seen, he spoke many times about his words, what save you from sin and a spiritual death by sin, if you listen, understand them, and practice them. If we do not commit wrongdoings or evil, if we do commit wrongdoings or evil, we must feel the remorse and regret for doing so first, and then come to our loving Creator and apologize to her or him and ask her or him to forgive us and not do it again. And she always does forgive, as if if we are sincere and truthful, and our sins are only forgiven by our loving Creator if we forgive others their sins against us anyway. We must take responsibility for our actions, and Jesus will support us in coming clean through following his words and way. So we've got to go through self-realization that we've done some wrong things, and we say sorry. And you can say sorry to Jesus too if you really love him and following him, and that's great. He'll say, no worries, but don't sin again. So you're forgiven through acknowledging your own sin, your own wrongdoing. It's like when you hurt someone, you've got to say sorry to them. You've got to acknowledge it. And to say sorry is the hardest word, is often said, because you feel, I don't want to say sorry. I feel sort of whatever, your pride gets in the way, and ego. But Jesus says, no, say sorry. And then you're cleansed and you feel much better. And then you're clean again, and off you go on the way to heaven. Keep going, get back on the path again. But his blood on the cross, again, his sacrifice on the cross, it can't stop you sinning. You have to stop that. He'll help you through his words. But his death on the cross is a really powerful message. We've all got another body, and you better get ready to live in it, he said, and you better get into it by becoming at one with love. So that's it. So that's the part there about the sins, that the red heifer sacrificed by the Jews cleansed them of their sins. Well, they've laid that straight onto Jesus. And unfortunately, that really doesn't do a lot. And this is exactly what Jesus himself taught in the prodigal son parable and with the woman caught in adultery. The prodigal son regrets and feels remorseful for his wrongdoings, asks his father to forgive him, which he does, and welcomes him back home where he stays and strays away no more into sin. Now, that's the instruction of Jesus of how to overcome sin. Understand you've sinned. Go and apologise to, in this case, the son apologises to his father. He took the inheritance and squandered it. Well, we talk to the divine spiritual creator and say, you've given me this beautiful spiritual body and identity of love, and look what I've been doing. Oh, blimey, I've been like an animal. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. And then she, or he, if you want to call God he, she absolutely forgives you because you've recognized the wrong and you've come back into your true spiritual self. And like any loving parent, they're like this father in the prodigal son. He welcomes the son back and puts a robe on him and a ring on his fingers and sandals. Even though he squandered all the inheritance, the father welcomes him back simply because the son went back to say, I'm so sorry. So sorry, I wasted all the things you gave me. We say that to this divine spiritual being, and it's all wiped clean. That's how sin's forgiven. You got to be remorseful and say sorry. But then don't sin anymore, as Jesus often says. So the woman caught in adultery was sorry for her wrongdoing, ashamed. Jesus says he forgives her and tells her to go on her way, but sin no more. Again, you see, the advice is, now it's up to you. You're forgiven now. She's ashamed, publicly shamed. He protected the Jews from murdering her, and of course, brought up their own conscience that they've all sinned. He who is without sin can cast the first stone. Beautiful saying. So there it is again. She's remorseful. Look at the trouble it's gotten her into. She's about to be murdered by the Jews, stoned to death, because that's their war god. That's what they did. And Jesus saves her, prevents himself from being stoned to death, because that's what that was all about. They brought her to him to trap him so they could kill him too, get him to blaspheme against the war god. But he was too wise and too profoundly wise and totally spiritual, and he got her out of it. He protected himself from being stoned. He wasn't stoned either. He didn't blaspheme their God directly. He just, through wisdom, he understood how to undo the situation. But there it is. She felt ashamed. She's sorry for what she did. He forgives her and then just advises her, well, don't sin anymore. That's how your sin is forgiven. That's how your sin is removed. You recognize you've sinned. You say sorry to whoever you've hurt or to this divine spiritual being who's given you a spiritual life of only love. if you move into the flesh body and do bad things or dirty things or evil things, you've got to say, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I just became like a dirty beast in front of you. Remember, God can always see you. So that's the other thing you've got to remember. Heaven can always see you all the time. So as difficult as that may be to really open up to and believe, it's true. So that's why we have to be on our best behaviour. But being on your best behaviour is good, if you can do it. So there's the woman caught in adultery, there's the prodigal son. They both feel ashamed and sorry for what they've done. They're both forgiven by the other one, and then they're welcomed back with love. That's how your sins are forgiven. So the words and spiritual instructions that Jesus teaches us can cleanse us of all wrongdoings and save us if we follow and practice them, not his blood. That's a different matter. That's the two bodies. He's showing you there you've got another body. I'll let him kill my body of flesh and I'll voluntarily do it, which is unbelievably, an amazing self-sacrifice to lay down his body of flesh. And he rose up again in the spiritual body, but he had to do it in full view of everyone. And the disciples then absolutely understood when they saw him in his spiritual body, he had two bodies. He sort of was trying to tell us, and then they finally get it. But yeah, they have to talk about it in a very sort of clandestine way. And in Egypt, the Jews were told to spread the blood of a sacrificed lamb over their doors so death will not come upon them. This is another Jewish overlay. The term the Lamb of God comes straight out of these sacrificial offerings that go back to Abraham. Jesus was a shepherd, not a lamb. However, the symbolism of calling Jesus by this name would not be lost on the Jews, although it would be meaningless to others. His blood on the cross of his dead body of flesh does help save us from death, and his self-sacrifice was extremely important and inspiring to us all, but not because he died for our sins, but to reveal our true eternal spiritual identity and body to us, which does not die. Again, this sacrificial lamb, that's a Jewish overlay, and it's deliberately done. Passover, sacrifice of the lamb, and he obviously intentionally died then so that it could empower his followers to talk to the Jews about Jesus was like a sacrificial lamb. They'd understand that. So that's part of the Jewish overlay on him, but it mustn't be taken literally because you lose the meaning of his other words. Jesus himself seems to have deliberately chosen the Passover feast timing for his death to reinforce the sacrificial lamb idea in the hope it would influence the Jews to follow him. This would have made it easier for the gospel writers to weave that Jewish theme in, to see Jesus through a Jewish lens and make him more acceptable to the Jews. The Messiah overlays are another attempt by the authors to legitimize Jesus more to the Jews. They searched through the old Jewish testaments to find any pertinent references about the Messiah they could use to match the life of Jesus and say they are all prophecies about him. They may or may not be, but they were an unnecessary addition along with the lamb symbolism because it was all about his words, his spiritual way of love, and the death of his body of flesh on the cross to reveal our spiritual body that saves us. But it would still be fair to call him a Messiah or anointed one of the Jews, but he was a spiritual Messiah, not the military Messiah they were praying, waiting and hoping for to come and make them great and powerful again. The great and powerful thing he brought for them was love, but they rejected it. He tried to help them understand you've got another identity, but they wanted to stay dualistic, murder and slaughter their enemies and steal the land, which is what they did. And of course, they haven't forgotten about doing that, have they? All these Jewish overlays about Jesus held great significance to the Jews and may have swayed some to leave the two-headed God and follow Jesus and our loving spiritual creator. Unfortunately, they can become a serious distraction amongst modern Judeo-Christians who would rather focus on these Jewish overlays than his words. And while these Jewish overlays would have only had a localized effect on the Jews, his words of love and the spiritual way to the heavenly world are universal. His words and his spiritual way of love as a child of our loving spiritual creator are the most important thing and will save you and me to heaven if we just listen to his words and follow his way. So that's my bit of a dialogue on how his words save you, not his blood. Please stop saying that. Please help children look at these words because they're so beautiful and so profound and so loving. And so that's my dialogue on the words. Sorry if it's a bit long, but that's just from a chapter on the book I've written called The Teachings of Jesus Unplugged, just to show that a lot of the things children are hearing about from the Judeo-Christians are wrong. They're misrepresentations, they're Jewish overlays, they're emphasising the wrong thing. And yet here we can see 17 quotes where Jesus says essentially, it's my words that save you, it's my words that save you. If you follow my words, you won't taste death, you won't die, you won't die. Over and over and over, he says, it's my words, my words, my words. And yet still I hear these very, very Jewish Christians say, oh, his blood, like the sacrificial lamb. They just talk about the Old Testament all the time. I say, why are you talking about the Jewish religion for? Why are you doing that? Oh, we're Christians. Yeah. Well, why are you talking about the Jewish religion? Because that's God there. That's Jesus. No, that's the Jewish religion. They murdered animals and sacrificed them to their war god and all that sort of stuff. We don't do that. We're full of love. But they say, oh, you're not going to be saved. I say, oh, well, not to worry. I hope you are, I say. So anyway, you can find it in this book here, The Teachings of Jesus Unplugged, where I talk about these Jewish overlays and such things. But most of all, of course, it's about his words. That's the big thing. So that's my little long dialogue on the teachings of Jesus Unplugged and his words save you, not his blood. Sorry it's so long. I don't know. Look, I've just been a follower of his and his words my whole life, ever since I was like 17 or whatever. And I've always been interested in Buddha, who was a pacifist. And Jesus was a pacifist, but that was destroyed. I've written about that in the book as well, how that was destroyed, and that was a real tragedy. No Christian should be in any army in the world unless you're maybe a medical doctor or something like that, or a nurse or something. We don't pick up the gun. We have a body of flesh that dies, but we have another body that lives on. So the Amish, the Quakers, the Assyrian Christians, Mennonites, myself, we make up about, the pacifist Christians make up about 1%, I don't know, maybe 2, if we're lucky. But we're the ones who really follow his teachings to death. So that for us is really important. We let go of our body of flesh, when it comes to it. We won't pick up the gun and kill the child who's got the gun pointing it at us. We won't do that. They're already lost. They're already not going to heaven. That's so sad, We just have to be an example and be a pacifist. As I say, Martin Luther was assassinated with the peace marches. Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated, peace marches. Jesus was assassinated, the Prince of Peace. The trouble we all face as pacifist Christians, or any pacifist of any religion. There are Jewish pacifists in Israel, bless them. There's only probably 0.5% or 1% at the most, and they demonstrate against the government for what they're doing to the Palestinians. And they're beautiful people. That very small percentage of the Jews in Israel understand, how evil the Israeli government is and the Israeli people for backing what they're doing. And bless those Jews. They're the lights in the whole of Israel, that little 1%. They're the lights in Israel. They're the real lights. They're the real children of a divine being of love. The others follow the two-headed God, the war God, and the limited God of love. So you can find these pacifists in the Jewish religion, the Christian religion, Muslim religion, Sikh religion, Hindu, atheists, an atheist can be a pacifist, totally committed, a humanitarian, no belief in life after death at all. But as Jesus said, you'll know them by their fruits. The spiritual children, you'll know them because they'll be hopefully like you, kind, loving, caring, generous, forgiving, never hurt anyone, or if they do, it's accidental, and they'll say sorry. Constantly aware of others who are suffering. They're never multi-billionaires. Those people have got no idea where they're heading. So, we don't become greedy, anything like that, while we walk past people homeless on the street. We don't commit that sort of offence against a God and against these children who have nothing while you've got 500 million in the bank or something, or $1 billion, whatever it is. So we don't worship money. None of that stuff. So anyone who's that sort of person, regardless of whether you follow Jesus or Buddha or the Jewish religion or the Hindu, it doesn't really matter. What matters is, are you at one with love? Are you in your spiritual body? Are you a pacifist? Because you've got to be love, forgiveness, and non-violence. If you've got those three things, you are a child of this divine spiritual being in a spiritual world. You are. If you haven't got those three, love, forgiveness, and non-violence, and live out of them, and you move into hate and love, or kill and protect, you've shifted out of your spiritual identity altogether. You're in the beast of the flesh identity. You're a shadow. You've turned away from the light. You cast a shadow and you move into it. And all evil out of every human child, except for those who have a chemical imbalance in the brain, that's another matter. But any free will decision to become a beast of the flesh means you've turned your back on heaven and on the light of heaven and the love of heaven. You cast a shadow, as you do when when you're back against the sun. You can see your shadow on the ground. You move into that shadow. That's the ego. That's the narcissistic ego. Out of that identity, the false identity, comes all the evil. Vladimir Putin's a liar. Netanyahu's a liar. All the soldiers are liars. They lie unto themselves. They're a lie to themselves. They are not living out of their true spiritual identity, so they're a lie. All those soldiers murdering, all of them, they're all lies. Liars. Filthy liars. They've become dark shadow figures. And they've become these other identities, beasts of the flesh, devoid of spiritual life and love, because that's the only real life that's in us. The flesh is just a bunch of amazing chemicals and organisms and things, but it's just earth in the end, just elements, earthly material elements. It's the spirit that gives life, and Jesus said that. It's in his words. Look, I have to laugh, but it's also very sad. I wish they'd follow his words. So, so if you've listened this long, that's amazing. No one listens to my rantings for very long. But if you believe in a universal message of Jesus, I'm interested in talking with you or emailing me. If you want to email me, it's jcinfocus. That's jcinfocus, one word, at gmail.com. And because I'm just looking for other pacifist Christians who belong to the very first church that he established. It's a universal message. People say, oh, only Jesus will save you. I say, no, don't say that. It's the way of Jesus that saves you. And Buddha taught that to a great extent. And it's also here and there, and bits of it here and bits of it in this other religion and this and that. Jesus had a beautiful dynamic of bringing love alive in the material world from the spiritual world. So he had a really beautiful dynamic, really beautiful. And you become selfless by serving others. I mean, the ego is gone. You can't be a servant and have an ego. You've got to help others and give up your ego to help someone. If you're selfish, you won't help anyone. You let go of the selfishness through loving others and serving them and helping them. And Jesus understood that will also help the material world, but at the same time you're strengthening your spiritual identity to get ready to leave your body of flesh, just as his spiritual identity left his body of flesh on the cross. Anyway, may you follow your own way, of course. I respect the fact that people will think what I'm saying is a load of rubbish. That's okay. I hope you get to heaven. I don't condemn anyone. But however, if you're committing evil, well, then I've got to say be careful. And certainly don't say Jesus is the only son of the Jewish God. Don't say that. I do get offended by that. I get upset when I hear that. I do get a little bit angry. He's my great friend. And the divine being that he's at one with is only love. And I do get a bit angry, I have to admit, when I hear people say, he is the son of the Jewish God. I say, no, he's not. And he doesn't want you to be either. So I do get a little bit upset about slandering him, because I've loved him all my life, and he's only love and non-violence, and so is the divine source of his life and my life and your life if we're spiritual. And he said that. If you see me, Philip, you see God. Well, Jesus didn't go around and kill anyone. But they don't listen to his words. They look at the old Jewish words though. Oh, we can kill our enemies, great. Sorry, you can't get into heaven doing that. Okay, I better go because this will be too boring otherwise. I hope you get to heaven. I hope I see you there. Let's try to be peace and loving in this world. I know it's hard, but forgive those who hurt you. I've had to forgive people who've hurt me. Everyone does. And don't hurt anyone. If we do, say sorry. And remember, heaven can see you. You have two bodies. One stays, one goes. That's what Jesus said. I'm happy to believe his words. Okay, well, goodbye for now. And yeah, jcinfocus@gmail.com. if you've listened to the end of this, boy, that's amazing. I should make these shorter, shouldn't I? Never mind. Bye for now.